Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer Podcast. I'm your co-host, Thomas Vick, joined by my co-host, Seth Wilson. Seth, how are you today?
Thomas, I'm doing great. It's almost July 4th, and happy Independence Day to you.
Happy 4th of July. It's crazy that the year is halfway over.
Agreed. I think we talked about recently just kind of that mid-year review and the reality of looking at the calendar and it's July and we're now starting that second half of the year and that push to accomplish the rest of the annual goals that we have set. Very exciting. I always like these milestones and mile markers that we get to pass as we're going through the year. It's a lot of fun.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, like we do all the time on the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer Podcast, we talk about law office management, various aspects of it. We've talked about a lot of different topics so far this year, and we encourage people to check out the YouTube page to learn more about things like client intake and just a bunch of law office management strategies, brainstorming ideas, marketing ideas, all that kind of stuff you can find on the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer YouTube channel. But today we kind of wanted to talk about what are just some of the personal benefits of having a solo or small firm practice. And, that is a great topic for me. I've really enjoyed having my own law practice, and it's been good for my family and the options that are available with that. And so we kind of wanted to talk about just what are the pros about going into law practice for yourself, hanging your own shingle. So I'll just open it up to you, Seth. What are the benefits personally to having a solo or small firm practice?
What a great question, Thomas. And obviously, if you're considering opening up your own practice or going into practice with another group of lawyers or another lawyer, for example, that's top of mind because as you're preparing and thinking about how you want the practice to operate, one of the big things is it needs to support the reason why you're doing it. And so for me, my context was I came from a little bit larger firm. I guess would be considered a mid-sized firm in the Indianapolis market area, and it was great. I mean, I had a great time there, but it was a commute for me because I lived in an adjoining suburb, and with my family time and those kind of things, that became very important to me because I had a new baby born, and I kind of had that. Boy, I'm gonna have this one-way commute for the next 18 years while she was in school and trying to get to soccer practices and just knowing sort of where that stress came from in terms of having a very compressed schedule kind of led me to that next decision to move into a smaller firm context and had the opportunity to join Ray's office up here and do that mainly for that lifestyle choice, if that makes sense. And that was a big component for it. The other side is just that flexibility of kind of the practice areas that I really wanted to work in. And I had been working on the estate planning side for a long time, but I did so much litigation that I didn't really have the time because my responsibility was in the litigation arena and I wanted to do a good job with that. And so trying to build those two different practice areas was tough. And when I got here, I kind of left the litigation behind and was able to start from ground zero. And what starting out, that's also tough, especially those first couple years as you're building up your reputation and your client base. We talked about that on the podcast before, but as that grows and your service grows and more clients that you've served and told others, it starts to organically build up a pretty solid foundation for you. And that's just been such a great thing because most of the time, the cases that I'm working on now are exactly the things I like doing. And that's so much fun. So, how about you? What was kind of your draw into the solo arena?
Yeah, well, I took a law office management class when I was in my third year of law school, and it was in that class where we read how to start and build your law practice. I forget the name of the author. You could probably tell me.
Jay Bloomberg.
Yeah, Thunberg. And when we were reading that book and going to class, I was just sitting in that class thinking, I understand this stuff. I believe that I can do it. And I took a lot of business classes in school, and I kind of came to the decision that it's better to be the employer than the employee. There may be more responsibilities with being the employer, but ultimately you're going to be in a better situation if you're the employer. Um, and and I was coming out, fairly soon after the recession of 2008. Law jobs pretty uh, were in pretty short supply. I came out in 2014. 2014 jobs were kind of sparse, and so I decided I'm just gonna try to do my own thing. And one of the things that is appealing about being your own boss, starting your own practice, is choosing your practice areas. I'm not the most contentious person. Maybe some would disagree with that, and occasionally I probably am contentious, but generally speaking, I'm not a very contentious person. So I didn't really want to be in, family law cases. I didn't really want to be doing personal injury. I wanted to choose the kinds of practice areas that I've chosen: estate planning and Medicaid planning, elder law, estate administrations. That's the kind of area of practice that I wanted to be in. So that's why I ventured out. And you're exactly right. You don't always have the choice of the type of cases you're going to have to take on at the very beginning. So, I took on a custody case. I took on landlord tenant cases. I, took anything and everything that I could get from the bar association's referral service. All of these things I was willing to take on, just kind of with the promise of being able to be more selective in the future. It took probably 5 to 7 years to actually be able to say I'm able to do that and choose the practice areas that I want to be in. I'm there now, and it's wonderful. We got systems in place, and it's been able to take a load off of me, been able to train people, get, automations in place. Nobody's really having to do it. And it, it's just wonderful, really. I was talking to a CPA the other day, and he was asking me, how's your practice going? And I was like, well, it's actually better than I could even, dream of. It's just really good right now, and thankful for that. And the flexibility that comes with being a law firm owner is just really great. Even when I was sort of in the beginning stages of my law practice, my wife's parents were in Texas, so I had the opportunity to, just go down for a week during Christmas and be with her family, and that was really special. And if I were working for a law firm, you know, the horror story is you've got to be cranking out the hours to get that end of the year bonus. I don't know if you have experience with that, but that's kind of was a nightmare scenario for me. I didn't want to spend the end of my year worrying about, what hours I got to get in to get my extra bonus there. Lots of flexibility. I got other things to say about the flexibility of the schedule, but anything you want to add as far as flexibility is concerned?
Well, I think you brought up a very important point and sort of decision point for folks is you wanted to be the employer and not the employee. And each of those has its own pros and cons. And so I think that's part of the assessment process is do you have that drive to deal with the non-legal things that are required to run a business? Or do you have someone you can put in place to do that for you so you can stay focused on the practice of law? And so I think that's a really important thing to wrestle with internally and come to a decision about because you've got to have that owner mindset in order to do all the things that being an owner is going to require. And that can take different forms inside of a law firm in terms of partner or shareholders or equity versus non-equity and those kind of things. However, it's just something that grows, I think, inside of you. And you had the opportunity to start on the front end, and I was there with you through that process in terms of hearing the stories and remembering some of the calls where the challenge of where's the next engagement going to come from? What am I going to do? Are you even taking on different levels of like document review, short term type of work, or being assigned cases to cover at a small claims hearing, or just different things that you have to do in order to keep the lights on. Yet I think all of those experiences help you prepare for what your ideal practice is going to look like. And I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of that kind of end of year pressure that is there oftentimes, because as much as we talk about goal planning and all that here, it's just on a bigger scale when you're in a larger firm context. And there's a lot of pressure inside that business and firm to meet its requirements for the year, right? Like it's not just a one-to-one analysis, it's a one-to-many analysis. Key, or each person is key to helping achieve that outcome. And so everybody's got to be hitting their numbers and those kind of things. And so just again, the more people that you have, there's going to be some more complexity and you're not going to have as much flexibility. And that's just one of the things that's really helpful, even from a decision making process. When you're in a smaller context, there's just fewer people to be involved in that decision making trail as well. Talk to me. You kind of alluded to having a couple more things to say. I'm really curious because last year you took on a little bit different approach to actually time in the office, and thought it might be helpful to kind of share what your thought process was there.
Yeah, so in May of 2024, I switched from a 5-day work week to a 4-day work week, and basically said everybody come in a little bit early, be willing to stay a little bit later, and I think we can make it work to get all of our tasks done within a 4-day work week rather than a 5-day work week. And we actually might be more productive if we have a 4-day work week than a 5-day work week. A lot of people have experimented with this, and I guess you can throw me into the mix as one of the businesses that has experimented with it now. But we've kept it because we've liked it so much. I think it's become popular in Europe, and I think some other businesses have experimented with it. Like I said, here in the U.S., I would come in a little bit earlier. 2024 was kind of an experiment for me. So I was like, how much more do I need to come in? And, at the end of the year, I was kind of thinking I probably need to, get into the office a little bit earlier every single day to make it work. And so in 2025, I've been in the office at, 6:30 in the morning or whatever, stayed until 5 or 5:30. And, so I've been in the office nearly as much as I would have been on a 5-day work week, but I've just condensed it into 4 days. And it's been really good. And we've kind of staggered our shifts, if you will, so that there is always somebody that is able to answer the phones Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, regardless of whether they're here in the office or at home. Somebody is able to be a presence for Vick Law, and that's been really good. So clients don't necessarily see it, even though all of us are enjoying a 4-day work week. It's been great, from a family standpoint. My wife does some online businesses and things like that, so it's allowed us to still have family time on like Fridays, and then on Saturdays that's her day to just do her online businesses and work on that. And it's been a really good work-life balance. That's the popular term, right? Work-life balance. But I think it helps me to be more productive, honestly, because I don't know about you, but a work week in the area of law, by Thursday, I was feeling kind of drained. I feel kind of drained by Thursday. And Friday, you're kind of zombied out a little bit. And then it gives you a full weekend to rest and recharge your batteries and be ready to just hit the ground running full speed ahead on Monday morning. And, so it's good from a productivity standpoint. I feel like to some extent there's more pressure on every single task, every single minute, Monday through Thursday now, which requires a greater level of focus. And we can't be dilly-dallying around. We're just in here in the office. Let's get stuff done and then enjoy our lives outside. That's kind of my attitude. Work really, really hard when you're in the office and then enjoy yourself when you're not in the office. And the 4-day work week has allowed for more time to be out of the office.
Yeah, that it's an awesome experience and experiment and adjustment, right? You got to go through that process. It takes a lot of courage to even think this is possible. What's going to happen if this whole day of the week is no longer covered? And it sounds like you've really kind of thought and experienced what it's like and made adjustments to it to make sure that the phones are covered and those kind of things. And I think it also demonstrates the power of constraints. When you put some constraints on yourself, it enhances that focus because everybody gets stuff done by a deadline. So if you're putting an artificial deadline, so to speak, but because of the commitment to this outcome, that's a more of a hard deadline, it orients you to getting things done. And so if you're deciding between picking up your phone to check X or whatever, LinkedIn, and sending the next or saving the next email, guess what you're going to do? You're going to elevate the right thing at that time, the right priority. So those constraints, I think, are really important in terms of balancing out, as you mentioned, kind of that work-life balance. And I think that's also important for you to consider if you're thinking about starting your own shop, because you may think, well, great, I can just do whatever I want, whenever I want, for however long I want. That's not really the point. You want to make sure that you're serving your clients well, but you're doing it in a way that doesn't harm your other relationships, even though it is going to take a lot of effort and energy and time on the outset. You've got to be committed to that process over time and refining it and making it work well for your family. That's kind of the point of running your own business.
Yeah. And I'm willing, if I see an email that comes through on a Friday when I'm not in the office, and I've got some time to answer it, I'll still answer it. Sometimes client just needs a one sentence response and they're happy, so I'm still responsive to the client. I'm just not in the office. I'm not checking my email constantly, but as it comes in, I'll shoot a message out, and it really isn't noticeable by my family. They don't know that I'm kind of working, kind of not, but I'm at home. And that's been good. One thing I would mention is it kind of goes along with that level of focus that is required by a 4-day work week. Um, if there's appointments scheduled throughout the day, it's so important to have a time period before those appointments get started to actually work on your matters. If you don't have that calendar blocked off where you can just sit and think on your actual legal practice, you're not going to be able to be successful. So my mornings are mostly let's get work product out so that I'm ready for the client appointments that are coming later on in the morning and into the afternoon. And I've learned over time, learned this in law school about myself, that I'm most productive, in the first 2 or 3 hours of the day. I think that's probably true for everybody. When you're fresh, things are going to be a little bit more efficient for you. And so that's been good. Yeah, I don't know if I can convince you and your firm to go to the 4-day work week, but I'm a fan of it.
Honestly, I hadn't really thought about it until this week because tomorrow is July 4th as the date we're recording this. And I thought, man, I am really looking forward to that Friday off. In light of this conversation, I was like, you're doing that almost every week.
Every week almost. Yep.
Yeah. So there's a lot, and that's my context is a little bit different in that I'm coming into an established office routine and policy and process. And so we're introducing some of these concepts and helping work through that. But that's part of the analysis. And I think why it's so important to know the numbers and have the plans and look at where you are against those constraints, because what are those opportunities? Are you using Friday to basically get catch up work done that should have been done because you weren't as focused throughout the week? Yeah, you're also taking time away from your families to do that. And so that's a counterbalance in terms of figuring that out. And it's not really reducing the number of hours that you're committing to the firm every week. It's just readjusting when those happen. And I think that's a really important point, is understanding when you are most productive and understanding the converse of that, or the converse of that, when you're not productive. And so trying to take on a challenging drafting project at 4:30 in the afternoon, probably not a great idea, because you're just going to end up spending so much time spinning your wheels. Push that task to the morning, do something in the afternoon that doesn't take as much brain power, and go home a little bit less stressed out because you didn't get that thing done. You said no. And so there's some concepts there that you want to be careful of, right? We don't want to procrastinate and just push all the work off. But Rory Vaden has a book called Procrastinate on Purpose. And there's some really good concepts and insights into how you can do that, right? You're just trying to sequence things so you can be as effective as you can be. Not just efficient. We want to be efficient, but it needs to be effective. That needs to be the measuring stick.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely recommend people to try out the 4-day work week. Before the podcast, we were talking a little bit, Seth, about a book that you are reading and some takeaways that you have gotten from that book, and kind of wanted you to at least talk about the ideas that you were discussing with me earlier.
Yeah, it's fun. I love to read, and my challenge is always, if I start reading sort of a business book, we'll call it, in the evening, my brain wakes back up, and now I'm starting to have all these ideas, and I don't get sleep and get up and get going in the morning. So I have to be careful about that, to the point of knowing yourself and what happens. But I've been reading a book called Buy Back Your Time, and honestly, I don't remember the author's name right off the top of my head, and I'm only just kind of into it. But one of the things that he made available through the book is a resource guide. And so there's a PDF associated with the concepts in the book. And one of the values, things that I've taken out of it so far, is he uses something similar to the Eisenhower matrix, or Stephen Covey kind of made it popular: the urgent, not important, important, not urgent, those kind of things. And this grid is just kind of a time tracking measure of, what types of tasks are you doing, when and how and why. And so just kind of giving you a little bit of a framework to organize what you do and what you do for your business. And when you're a small business owner, you wear all of the hats initially. And so you've got to kind of figure out which of those things are most unique to you that you can do, and everything that you can get rid of off your to-do list, do so. And so that takes different shapes and time, as time goes on through your practice. And Michael Hyatt has a zone of genius, he calls it, I think, in this concept. But that's the idea of really identifying those areas where you can produce the most value to your firm in terms of finances and in terms of enjoyment for what you do. And that's where you're trying to get to, that upper right hand quadrant there.
Yeah. It's all about flexibility in a law firm, is really about how much are you able to get accomplished in your law firm without you having to do all of it. Your law practice becomes more valuable the less you're needed. And you want to work on your practice, not in your practice, all these kind of aphorisms. And that's the challenge. It might be that you need to be working more on creating templates that other people can use, and making sure that those are workable, easily understandable without your input. Work on those things so that you can back away and not be needed the next time that form needs to be used. The more that you kind of invest into equipping your law firm and your law firm employees with the answers that they need on a regular basis, unless you're going to have to do that on a repetitive, you know, day-to-day basis. And that's going to open up more opportunities for you. Yes, there could be more free time available to you because of that, but more opportunities for growth, more opportunities for you to meet with clients, which is really what is enjoyable in law practice. Getting to know clients, especially in an estate planning practice like mine, gives you more, I don't know, emotional wherewithal too, to just be there for people. Uh, you're not going to be as spread. You're not going to be spread as thin if you kind of equip your staff with the tools that they need. So yeah, that's the more that you buy back time is really, I think, investing into the resources that we talk about all the time in the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer podcast.
Yeah, and Thomas, the that last point that you made in terms of the emotional capacity that you have to serve your clients goes up. And I think about that because how many times have I been guilty over the years of giving everything I have at the office, and then I come home and I've got nothing left for the family.
You just sit on the couch and you zone out, and you don't can't really converse with your family because you're just tired and you've been stressed out. I can relate for sure.
Yeah, and we all can, and there are days when that's going to happen, and that's okay. But I think the reality of how can I help build something that supports me and gives me the best chance of having enough left in the tank, so to speak, when I get home to serve that role well, or the community events that I'm involved in, or fill in the blank. And so that's the constant analysis required as you're going through this. Like I said, I like that quadrant framework to say, okay, where does this fit into that? And it's not just tracking things to have something else to track, but boy, I really need to think about this. I need to wrestle with it. I need to apply it to what I'm doing to make my practice better. And then I need to teach others how to do that. And so they can operate more in the areas that light them up and they like to do, because that hopefully is different than what I like to do. And that's what makes the team work well together. And then also, the thing that scares me is, well, I'm going to identify that somebody else has the same skill set and then I'm unnecessary.
Yeah, yeah,
So, but that would be a good thing, right? If you have that skill set, and how do you then replicate yourself? By that, right? You're finding someone with that other skill set. So, just all those things are really, I think, helpful as you're thinking about, as you said, kind of the good to great working on your business and not just in the business. And there's a balance there because you do need to have enough in the business to understand what needs to be done to allow others to also provide that same level of quality and uh, character that you're hoping to accomplish with your practice.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I have enjoyed this conversation, Seth. I hope you have as well, and other people that are listening to this. I want to encourage everybody to check out our Lifetime Legacy Lawyer channel on YouTube. Hit subscribe, like this video, and share it with others that might be thinking about starting or building a law practice, and point them to this resource because that's what we're trying to do. We're the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer podcast. We're helping lawyers law.
Yeah, it's so much fun, Thomas. I really appreciate it. I mean, just the chance to debrief on some of these other thoughts that you have, because in the midst of the day to day, you can lose sight of the big picture of what you're trying to accomplish. And so hopefully you can get some encouragement from this, maybe get up that courage to take the next step and start drafting out the business plan, and maybe I could do this, and get that impetus to get started. And that's what we really want to do, is help, because again, we talked about this, but the impending attorney shortage that's coming, I think that can be really filled by solo and small firms handling their communities and being involved in their communities. And I really think that's a cool opportunity for just the technology that's available now. So you're not just tied to a particular geographic spot. You can practice from almost anywhere. and you can have a home base and then, operate from there, which is really kind of neat. So just lots of stuff coming down. I'm really excited about. I think you and I want to continue to get better as podcasters, whatever that means, equipment wise. And, I'm constantly moving stuff around, trying to figure out better ways to do things. So, got guests starting to line up in the queue for the fall in terms of law firm conversations with law firm leaders. And again, we just really want to help lawyers launch. And once that launch is going, obviously you're going to have to keep rolling with it. But whatever we can do on the front end to help get that going and give you the information that you need, check it out on the channel. Hopefully it's helpful for you.
Yeah. I appreciate it, Seth. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll talk to you next time.
Sounds good. See you, Thomas.